What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Defer It to the Game. And tonight we're talking about the five busiest off seasons of the 2025 league year so far in Major League Baseball. And there's been a lot of moving and shaking in this off season, and so kind of at this point in the off season, just kind of wanted to give kind of a general kind of where we're at with teams. And these aren't necessarily the best; they aren't necessarily the most wins above replacement or value added. They're just kind of the busiest, like what teams are doing the most moving and shaking in order to get ready for the 2025 season. And before anything, wanted to start off with some honorable mentions. We have two teams here that are going to be honorable mentions for the 2025 offseason. The first of which is going to be the Texas Rangers. So the Texas Rangers added Nathan Eovaldi. They re-signed him. They added Jock Peterson from the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they signed Kyle Higashioka from the San Diego Padres. And overall, with losing Scherzer and just kind of falling a little bit short last year, this is a classic kind of reload and re-up for the 2025 season. This is a very good Rangers ball club, already led by Semien and Seager. They don't really need a whole lot. Plus, they have a great farm system that's still adding players. This is a great retool. Jock Peterson's a great clubhouse guy. Eovaldi has turned into one of the most consistent pitchers of the last 10 years. As much as his AL Cy Young was a bit fluky, the man has produced over a number of years. And as a Yankees fan myself, I got all the love in the world for Higashioka. Great catcher. He's going to back up Jonah Heim, and I think he's going to do a great job. That's a backup catcher that no pitcher is going to scoff at having, and he might even have a couple preferred pitchers that will want Higashioka to catch him. And kind of out of nowhere, the Oakland Athletics cracked the honorable mentions on this list. They didn't have the offseason to compete with our top five, but they had a very un-A's like offseason. They went out and got Luis Severino to be their number one starter for their time in Sacramento. 3 years, really, it was the biggest contract in Oakland history. They hadn't had a contract get that high since Chavez in 2003. And they also did something extremely un-A's like. They went out and did an arbitration extension with one of their current players, Brent Rooker, who was a great outfielder. They did an awesome job. They also added Gio Urshela in the offseason. Gio is another one of these former Yankees who just kind of didn't have enough space on the diamond for the Yankees. He's been a very productive player in a couple different stops in the majors since he left New York. And so he's a very valuable defensive ad and just kind of a general offensive ad. This is kind of a year where the A's are in flux and could be for the next couple of years until the Vegas move goes into effect. And so, it seems like they're trying to put a good product on the field in Sacramento. So I gotta give a bit of a golf clap honorable mention to the the Sacra Vegas A's for that one. And with that, we're gonna go into our top five. You can see orange and black. Our number five is the San Francisco Giants. And if you look at their 2025, 24-25 offseason, see, they added a couple really good pieces. Willy Adames is a great young shortstop, really entering his prime years. He had an awesome tenure in Milwaukee, did a really, really good job. They added Justin Verlander, who I still think has valuable time left in the majors. He's stated that he wants to go out and prove that he still has the stuff, that he can still get to that 300 win threshold. In my mind, he's already a no doubt Hall of Famer. I would say first ballot, my preference, but he's probably second or third, which is nothing to scoff at for a pitcher. He's been durable. He's going to a really pitcher-friendly ballpark in Oracle Park. So, he's helping himself out. It's not like he's going to Cincinnati or New York where it's a really hitter-friendly ballpark and it's going to go up and just kind of hurt him by sheer environment. And the other addition they made, this is why kind of they're in the top. That's why they're five. They're not higher. Max Stassi, Max has been in the majors for a while. He's been around the block, and so he's a good piece, but he's not gonna change the trajectory of the franchise. And in terms of losses, Blake Snell is a huge loss. Blake Snell going down the coast to the Dodgers. Blake Snell is a top-end starter. It's really hard to make up that production and that value. And also losing Michael Conforto, who has been on National League contenders for what feels like the last 20 years. Really good outfielder, seems like he's a good clubhouse guy, seems like he is a good addition in the field as well as at the plate. And so I can't say that through free agency or through the offseason they directly made up for the loss of Conforto. Trying to compare current Verlander to current Snell is a bit unfair to Justin Verlander, so I don't really want to do a whole bunch of comparisons for that, but they've got some really good leadership in Willy Adames kind of being in that younger crowd, and then a really seasoned vet like Justin Verlander. You can never really go wrong with that. And at our number 4 slot, we got red and black. We're going out to the desert. We got the Arizona Diamondbacks with some really interesting additions. I think this makes them a very, very competitive team in 2025. The NL West is going to be super competitive in 2025. So they are retooling and reloading to try and make a push this year with Corbin Burnes, who they got from Baltimore. Corbin Burnes, one of my favorite pitchers. Absolutely love his cutter. It's one of the best pitches in baseball right now. Josh Naylor, they got from Cleveland. He's a really good first baseman. I think Cleveland kind of saw the arbitration and free agency reaper coming, and so they decided to kind of prioritize their guys, and just by a byproduct, Arizona gets a awesome first baseman. And then just kind of like San Francisco, they didn't really have a marquee third addition. A.J. Puck they got from Miami. He's a really serviceable reliever. There's nothing wrong with that. He's going to add a lot, and pitching is something that the Diamondbacks already have in bunches. So if they can stay healthy and they can stay consistent, I think that's going to be really, really excellent. And with the introduction of Naylor comes the loss of Christian Walker and the loss of Jock Peterson. So, Jock, well known as a great clubhouse guy, talked about him a little bit with the Texas Rangers. That kind of value at a DH position can be made up for in certain ways, but Jock Peterson is a top-end Major League DH, really good player, and Christian Walker's another really, really good MLB first baseman. So, I think they decided to pivot younger and really make sure that they had a marquee number 1 gamer in Corbin Burnes. And so with Fott, with Gallen, they've got some really, really good pieces in that rotation, so hopefully they should be able to lock down some offenses at Chase Field. And at our number 3 slot, a bit of a surprise, the New York Mets. I think on most kind of clickbaity articles, the Mets are going to be number 1 for a very, very obvious reason. Juan Soto. And don't get me wrong, it is one of the most consequential contracts in Major League history. Shohei, you could kind of argue, was an edge case because he provided value at the plate and on the mound. And I don't hate this contract for Juan Soto. In my opinion, Juan Soto is the closest thing that we are going to see ever to Ted Williams. That's just my opinion. But, they re-signed Sean Manaea, really good contract to get him back in orange and blue. I think the Mets did a really solid job. But at the same time, outside of those 2 kind of marquee moves, they got Frankie Montas and they got Clay Holmes. Once again, that kind of third addition, especially in the rotation, I think the Mets are going to have to make a move either at the deadline or get one of the pitchers that's left, like Jack Flaherty, on the market to really beef up that rotation. Their losses, Luis Severino, I think, is fine. You keep Manaea, you get Montas and Holmes, maybe you get Flaherty. The Mets really do have no such thing as a payroll restraint to work with right now, so they can go nuts. And if the A's were going to pay Severino, then they might as well. And so, Pete Alonso is kind of the big if out there. It seems like he's holding out for more money. It really depends who's going to offer it. I don't know if it's going to be the Mets. If it were the Mets, it probably would have happened by now. So the loss of Pete Alonso, even off a down year in 2024, I expect him to rebound in 2025. So that could end up being a pretty notable loss for the Mets. At number 2, we just go across the river over to the Bronx with the New York Yankees. It might seem a little bit crazy to put the team that lost the Soto sweepstakes ahead of the team that won it, but I think there's some sound logic behind it. So you bring in Max Fried, you bring in Cody Bellinger, and you bring in Devin Williams. Those are 3 major additions that help a lot of problems that the Yankees faced in a way that I don't think the Mets solved problems that affected them in 2024. Starting pitching, the Yankees needed more starting pitching and more top-end starting pitching, with Nestor Cortez a little bit inconsistent, Carlos Rodon a bit inconsistent, and Garrett Cole hurt. They got an absolute workhorse from Atlanta and Max Fried. He's going to end up doing a really good job in pinstripes, I think, and I think they add a lot to their rotation with that. Outfield defense was an absolute Achilles heel of the Yankees last year, and I think they went into this offseason with the approach of, if anything, we can't have that disastrous inning like we had in the World Series. And so Cody Bellinger adds a lot on the defensive front. Devin Williams continues to beef up the rotation. The Yankees have excelled at never lacking bullpen arms. And so they saw Devin Williams on the market and they were like, all right, let's go get him. And so I think they did a really good job in that trade. Nestor had kind of reached the end of his serviceable time with the Yankees. You could kind of see things falling off. Milwaukee will work their devil magic to turn Nestor Cortez into an NL All-Star, but I do think getting Devin Williams was ultimately the right decision to beef up the rotation the bullpen for the playoffs. And in terms of losses, the first name speaks for itself. Losing Juan Soto, losing his bat, losing his presence in the clubhouse and his leadership and his confidence, I think is a huge loss for any team. And I don't think anyone is expecting any of these 3 additions to add to that for Juan Soto. You can't really ever make that up. But at the same time, in terms of clubhouse leadership, having Aaron Judge, having Giancarlo Stanton, having Garrett Cole, they have guys to where the Yankees aren't necessarily in a leadership vacuum. And so I think the Yankees got busier because they let Soto go. If they re-sign Soto, I don't think the Yankees make this top 5. I think they just run it back, whereas I think this year the Yankees took the approach of, we have to diversify, we have to get better on defense, we have to become a more well-rounded team. And so that change in their roster and change of how they're going to look is the main reason why they make the number 2 on this list, for pure busyness. Now, I think if the Yankees ponied up and signed Soto, I would not look at them any other way, and I think most of Major League Baseball would understand it. And once again, just like the Mets, the Yankees have enough where they could have done all of these moves and re-signed Juan Soto. But, with the luxury tax, there are considerations nowadays that they're having to take into account. And Clay Holmes has been a very valuable Yankee, too, that they're losing. So I don't want to discount the Yankees losing him either. I think the Mets are going to have a very solid pitcher in Clay Holmes, but I think in terms of how the Yankees shook up their team, that's why they ended up being higher than the Mets, because the Mets essentially are running back the same team, but adding Juan Soto. And at number 1 on our list, like they are in everything, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the new evil empire. I am sorry, New York. So adding Blake Snell, re-signing Teoscar Hernandez, and getting Ha-Seong Kim from Korea. So the Dodgers have been in permanent retooling. We are pushing for the championship mode year in, year out. In terms of their losses, Walker Buehler goes out, Gavin Lux goes out, and all of a sudden you add Ha-Seong Kim from Korea, can play a bunch of infield positions. The Dodgers love infield versatility, and so I think that's a critical part of what the Dodgers try to do as an organization. And a guy like Ha-Seong Kim just makes so much sense in that role. And, no disrespect to Walker Buehler, I think he's going to crush it in Boston in 2025. But if you gave me the option, I'm probably going Snell over Buehler. Snell is a top-end starter with Walker Buehler leaving in free agency, Clayton Kershaw getting a little bit older and still unsigned at this point. Blake Snell was the perfect addition, and it's the one that the Dodgers would just seemingly make in this situation. And so I think it just makes a lot of sense. In terms of busyness, it's not as drastic as, say, the Yankees changing their philosophy, but at the same time, if Blake Snell had gone to another team besides the Dodgers in the NL West, the balance of power would continue to shift a little bit. I think Snell moves the needle a little bit more than Burns based off what he can do when he's healthy and he's going. And so the other part is re-signing Teoscar Hernandez. He's been incredible in a Dodger uniform, better than he's been in any other uniform in the league. And so the fact that they were able to keep the Beatles together essentially with that whole team of stars, it's weird that the best team has a busy offseason and still stays the best team with the majority of those players. And so, I think it's hard to argue that the Dodgers didn't have one of the better off seasons in Major League Baseball merely because of how continuous they were able to keep that entire team. And, that's why the Dodgers take that number one spot. There's a couple asterisks to this whole thing. There are a lot of players still left in free agency. We still have Max Scherzer still out there. We still have Jack Flaherty out there. We still have a bunch of guys that still need to sign with their teams. Health and aging are going to play a huge factor in this whole thing. Will Snell stay healthy? Will Justin Verlander stay healthy, and will his age curve age more gently than other players? I think there's a ton of things that could still influence this whole thing, but in terms of what we can see now, frozen in time, I think this is where we're at in terms of the offseason, as well as park factors. Juan Soto's going from a super lefty-friendly ballpark in Yankee Stadium to a pretty unwelcoming ballpark in Citi Field for hitters, to say the least. And, I think that's going to have a big effect on how the actual players do in 2025. But in terms of just what teams are doing in order to retool for 2025, I think that's probably going to influence things a little bit more than just the park factors. And, that's kind of the end of our list here. Let me know what you think the best offseason moves of the year were. Comment down below who is still out on the market and where you see them going down the line. Is there a team I totally missed? And coming up soon, we're going to do the 5 sleepiest off seasons in 2024, 2025. And we'll see a whole different slew of teams and a whole different slew of situations. There were a lot of competitors on this list. There will be more competitors than you think on the sleepiest off-season list. So I'll leave that to that video. But thank you all for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.